Hey everyone, welcome to this presentation, this weekly webinar in the series of weekly webinars we're having leading up to the small firm bootcamp we're doing in May, early May of 2020 this year, May 7th and 8th, which is Thursday and Friday. And the purpose of these webinars is to help folks who have registered for the bootcamp start meeting the speakers and learning what the speakers can help them understand before they get to the bootcamp, and also to help those of you who haven't yet decided whether you're coming to the boot camp but decided to register for these weekly webinars and get the benefits of attending. You don't get the recordings unless you register, but if you register, you will get the recordings of all of them when you register, if you decide to register. But I want to introduce you to a good friend, one of the speakers. He's been, I think, at every boot camp I've ever done, and that is Craig Bayer. So Craig, welcome to this webinar, and thank you for doing it.
Well, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, and well, we always have a good time. We learn things. And so what I want you to talk about is something that you and I talk about pretty frequently, or, whenever we're meeting, we're talking about important tech stuff, and that is security. And this is a topic we could spend, as you and I both know, several hours on, maybe a couple of days on, because there is a lot that you could talk about with security, but we don't want to cover the waterfront. What we want to do is focus in on some important things that we feel like people need to know. They're the most important things, and then we can keep talking about this at the boot camp, and we can talk about it in the Slack group. That's another way that people who sign up for the boot camp can start learning and talking, is in the private channel we have in Slack. But I don't want to give too much preamble. I just want to hand it over to you and say to you, so when we talk about security, and there's lots of stuff we could talk about, what are the most important things so that lawyers and solo and small firm practices can say, okay, that's what I really need to do like now. That's going to make a big difference. And I will just set this up by saying the reason why Craig knows so much more about this than I do is that, and you could add to this, but Craig has done, kind of a couple of different things in his evolution of helping lawyers with technology. And at one point, some of it related to practice management software in Clio, and you're a Clio certified consultant. But your focus has become, in the past couple of years, digital document management. So you are a net documents consultant, and storing documents in the cloud, storing important documents in the cloud, immediately implicates the importance of security. So that's how you know about this stuff. At least that's my take on it. But you can add to that and then take it from there.
Yes. So, and not to be a shill here, it does not need to be net documents. There's other products out there that when you put your documents in those products, when you don't leave them on a server or a Windows computer, you can't get things like the crypto locker virus. That's the virus that City of New Orleans got, City of Baton Rouge got, City of Atlanta got, and how many other places, how many other law firms have gotten that. So someone clicks on a link at your office and you come in the next day and all your files are encrypted and you can't get access to them. You have to then restore either from a backup, which if you can do that, it's still going to take, your office is going to be down, or you have to pay a little bit of ransom to get those files. And so that's really kind of how I started getting into this. The other thing that I'll just bring up is, I have a company that works just with law firms, and our company needs to be really secure. So we need to put stuff together that makes sure that we're secure. This example right here, and we're kind of jumping around, which I think is good.
Start with this. Great.
Yeah, so this is the largest law firm in the world, DLA Piper, and this is when you walked into their office, this is what you saw. Do not turn on your computers.
This is like 2 years ago or something, right?
Yes. No exceptions, because of course all the attorneys think that they have exceptions to that. But they got the crypto locker virus. And so, or they got a variant of the CryptoLocker virus, and it's been called different things like WannaCry, but no one could get to anything. Um, couldn't get to
So let me take
email.
so let me so let me take a second and just say if anyone doesn't know what the CryptoLocker virus is, and you type into the questions panel and say I'm not exactly sure, we'll dive into it. But I'm assuming at this point that everybody's kind of heard of it. But basically, in short fashion, it's instead of you encrypting your data and protecting it, a hacker comes in and goes, here, let me do that for you. Except now they have the only way of unlocking it. So they basically hold your data ransom is what happens. That's the short version. But if you have more questions, we're happy to answer them in the questions section.
You would see a screen almost like this that would come up and would tell you, if you want to get to your files, you have to pay that ransom, or you can go through the backup. So that's one way I kind of got into security. And then there's just, obviously putting documents in the cloud has some inherent advantages, but there's a lot of other stuff that you can do as well to make sure you're secure. I almost kind of feel like the problem that we have, especially in the legal community, is no one does any of this until it happens. Like
Right.
until it happens to them, until they suffer a data breach, until they have an issue, they just don't care about security. Now, I almost think it's probably the same in our personal life. I have security cameras at my home now. Why? Because it got broken into. So now I've put the cameras up there. No, I don't know if the cameras do anything or not. But I mean,
Right.
again, we think about security after an event happens to us. What can we do to think about it beforehand? Um, and we can start with this. I mean, I don't know if you've looked at, and I know you have people from different states, but different states have different requirements if you suffer a data breach.
Oh,
Do
the breach
you
notification laws, yeah, they're
Right.
pretty much universal now, and yeah, and so they kick in, and if you've had your data compromised, you now need to tell everybody whose data you had that was compromised, hey, I've been hacked. So it's not just a big problem in the sense that you have to fix it and pay the ransom or whatever. You also have to now notify every client whose data was compromised that, by the way, I completely screwed up and this data was compromised, which is kind of the opposite of good marketing, right? Like that's making them feel less secure about you working with them. So it's not good. It's all around bad if your stuff gets hacked. And I want to just mention that I think I'm big, as many of you guys know, about the whole why does psychology matter more than technology? And if you want to help people, it's not enough I have found to say, hey, here's the best thing you should do. You have to take into account human nature, and human nature tends to say, well, I don't really think I'm going to get hacked, so maybe I shouldn't just worry about that right now. I'll get to that later. And in preparing for this, Craig and I were talking about this, and we kicked it around, and I said, I'm going to say, what I'm going to say now, which is that I think people feel like you have to be targeted. Like you're like, yes, it's true. If your mental construct of this is, are you going to be targeted by a hacker? Well, no, they're not targeting you because you're not well known enough. DLA Piper is big, so yeah, you're right. If you think, well, DLA Piper is gonna get it, but I'm not. But that's not how it works. They're not targeting people. Like they're automating. It's like spam. They're just blasting a bunch of places where it's like Google's bots that crawl websites and try to figure out what's on the content and whether they should send. They have bots that crawl websites and look for vulnerabilities and then automatically start kicking in and doing stuff. And then they, just, scan their list and go, okay, well, we're in on this law firm. Okay, it looks like their data has been compromised. All right, let's just go ahead and send them that ransomware notice now because, the automation kicked in. That's how it's going to happen. So you need to be worried about this if you have any data in the cloud that you are managing. Now, if you're using net documents and, thank you, Craig, for not I mean, this is why I invite people like Craig, because Craig's always quick to point out, look, that's not the only thing you have an option for. But net documents would be one example of a company who has a mission critical need to protect the data there because, if their data gets compromised, it's game over for them. So they worry about it way more than you do. They're way better at figuring out how to protect, against vulnerabilities than you are. they're more motivated to keep up with what might be the latest potential vulnerability than you would be. So all in all, you storing data in net documents is better than you trying to store it on a server you maintain, even if you are DLA Piper. Would you say that's pretty accurate, Greg?
That's completely accurate. And you have, and here, and I think let's bring up the other option is Box. So, which I don't
Mm-hmm.
have any relationship with, but if you're storing your documents in one of those services, you're also using services that large corporations, Deutsche Bank, Goldman Sachs, Chase Bank use as well. So you have the same security as them, which is the great thing about the cloud. You couldn't build a security infrastructure in your office to match Chase Bank. But if you just subscribe to the same service that they do, then you have the same security they have.
Right, and Chase Bank figured out that they can't do it as well as Box or as Net Documents, right?
Right.
Because anything done at scale is going to be more robust than something that's done at a lesser level, right? And the largest scale for this kind of thing would be something like Net Documents, and so the reason to use those kind of services for your super protected data, right? We're talking about the stuff that really matters. We're not talking about the trivial stuff, right? But that super important information that you want to have access to from anywhere, which means through the cloud, if you put it in something like Net Documents, what you're really doing is saying, well, gee, I can trust this because all these other people who are super high level are trusting it, as opposed to a bunch of different options that might be okay, but how do you really know if they're okay? And are you skilled enough to vet whether some new developing tool that does something similar is as good as Net Documents? And I would, I wouldn't waste my time with it. I just go, let's just use the one that I know has been doing this really well at scale for a long time. Why would I want to try something new just because it has some perceived different feature or whatever?
Right. Well, and let's, because I get this question all the time. If you have a computer and it's connected to the internet, in a sense, you're using cloud computing, right? I mean,
Right.
it has the
Yeah.
exact same vulnerabilities that anything else that's connected to the internet does. So I think it's better in a sense to have, all that behind the moat. That
Right.
is a company that's worried about that. So I guess, and that goes to the same thing with so documents. If you could put it in some sort of cloud-based storage and not have it natively hosted on a Windows folder structure, then you're going to be in good shape. If you
Right.
can take your email and have it hosted in with Google or Microsoft Office 365, you're going to be in good shape. You've also separated those two things. So 6 or 7 years ago, those all resided in your office. So like the
Uh-huh.
whole thing with DLA Piper, everything went down. Now we've separated those. So God forbid one of those goes down, not everything goes down.
Right. And it's not just from hackers because, my personal example, and you were here for this too, was Katrina. And my firm, I was with the big firm then, and we did all the things you're supposed to do, right? Like we made backups regularly, and we, sent them off site, or we did everything you're supposed to do, except then Hurricane Katrina hits, and the city shut down for 6 weeks, and all the data is stuck in servers on the 40th floor of a tall building in New Orleans, and nobody's allowed back in the city for the 6 weeks, and so we're out of luck. That happened because there was a single point of failure and it wasn't accessible easily. And if we had had all that data in Net Documents and Google Mail or whatever, that wouldn't be the problem, right? There'd be some other problem, but that wouldn't be it. And we've evolved because people have learned from those experiences that you know that my old big firm no longer manages its own servers. They don't even
Right.
have the IT guy. The IT guy got let go not too long ago, and I heard about it, and he was sad. But they told him like, yeah, basically we're just outsourcing everything to people that can remote in from the cloud. So that's where the big firms are, and that's where you are. And the trick here now is if you're doing that, what do you need to do to keep yourself protected beyond just posting your data on some Net document server and using Gmail?
Well, So, okay, we're just making the assumption that we're doing that. The other one, and I think this, Ernie, kind of fits into a lot of other stuff that you say about having systems in place and having
Mhm.
policies in place. So I think that one of the things that we had to do when we actually got really serious about this is come through and come up with a policy. And what the policy does, and this is not really like a legalese document, but we list everything that we use in the business, right? So, I mean, if you think about this now, you know how these things creep up, like, oh, I've got a Spotify account, I got a Netflix account. Well, the same concept is with your work. You need to list every service that you use: Westlaw, Lexis, email, your blog, things like that, just in a Word document, and then have a policy in place when someone leaves, okay, or when you need to change a password, you at least know what you need to change. So I
Right.
want, this is something that you need to sit down and do. Just, this is what we have, and here's our policy. You also need to have a policy, because I think what we've done is we've talked about the virus issue, but let's talk about the other important thing in security, which is former employees, and just, you know,
Yep.
keeping
Totally.
things,
Yeah.
just keeping things tight. So list everything that you have a policy in place when someone leaves, when you disable all these accounts, so that you can go through and disable them. And that includes your Wi-Fi password as well. That needs to be
Hmm.
changed. That also needs to be on what is called a guest network. So if someone comes to your office, if you have an office, they are not connecting to the company's network. They're connecting to a guest network, which is segmented off from your network.
Hmm.
Um, going through this, I'm not, I mean, everyone's like, what sort of computer do you use? And I'm like, I have a Windows and a Mac computer. So I don't really
Hmm.
care which one it is. You want to encrypt your hard drive. So on your Windows computer or on your Mac, encrypting your hard drive on your Mac is super easy because Apple is a lot more simple. Microsoft is a little bit harder because Windows Home doesn't allow encryption, and Windows Pro does, or the Windows Business. So
Hmm.
we need to have encryption placed on there. That's something that I do. That goes back to what we talked about early, the breach notification. If you have a
Hmm.
laptop and it gets stolen and it has been encrypted, you don't have to do a breach notification to anyone
Right.
because
Because
you've
the
encrypted the data.
presumption, yeah, the assumption is that no one's going to be able to get it because, and I'll give like what might not be exactly perfectly accurate description of this, but this is how how I have it in my mind is that in the old days, if you had a password that protected somebody from getting into your computer, all it really was doing was protecting you from accessing the hard drive through the computer as you're using it. But if, somebody wanted to get the hard drive, they basically remove it from the computer, put it in a new computer that they had a password to, and now they could see it, right? I don't know if that's accurate, but that's not encrypted, right? The data on it's not encrypted. It's there. It's just, you have to get to it through the password. But now if you encrypt it, you can take that hard drive out and put it anywhere. It doesn't matter. It's encrypted. The only way you're going to get it is by using the password. So you want to enable encryption. It used to be you wouldn't do it because it would slow the computer down. That's no longer the case. So there's no reason not to enable encryption. The only reason you wouldn't encrypt something, and pay close attention here, is if you can't remember the password to decrypt it. If you're that, you know, unable to remember that password, because once you encrypt it, if you don't have the password, it's game over.
Well, and to pump back on that, if you're using an Apple or a Windows product, which I'm just assuming that's everyone, um,
Yeah.
iCloud will allow you to save the encryption password encrypted in iCloud, and Windows Live allows you to do the exact same thing. And
Right.
just real quick here, if we just go over, let me just go back here because I think that this is somewhat important, and this is why this device, which costs a total of $4.50 with Prime shipped, I can break open a computer, plug it in, and read all the data unless the hard drive is encrypted. So that's why
Yeah,
we're
that's what I was.
asking people.
Right. That's what I was just talking about. Right.
Yeah.
That's how you round it.
So then let's talk about another weakness, and this is a total weakness that I see here all the time is, you're dealing with a lot of client data, and I do, because of the nature of my job, a lot of document migrations from one system to another. And I find that attorneys are just putting data on flash drives and then mailing it to people without
Hmm.
any encryption on there. So if you're sharing data via a flash drive, what I would just recommend, because this is the easiest thing, is that you need to use a hard drive with a lock on it, with a PIN code. So I have two of these, and I ship them to clients. But I put
Hmm.
data on them, I'll ship them to someone, and then I will call them up and tell them what the PIN code is. I've
I never
encrypted.
even. That's incredible.
Yeah.
When did this occur? I didn't even know anything about this.
Well, so the thing is that you can always, on a Mac or Windows, you can encrypt a flash drive. Okay, but it's a
Right,
pain in
but
the
this
neck.
has a keypad on it.
Right. So you plug it
Oh,
in, and then you plug in the PIN code, and then it unlock. You press the unlock button, just like your house, and
yeah.
then it unlocks, and then you can read the data off of it. Um,
Wow.
but
I need
if
one of
you're,
those.
yeah, well, you can go on to Amazon. Apricorn is the company that I use. They have a whole bunch of different devices there.
Uh,
So that will
oh.
handle that. I mean, I think that the one, because I know we are. Well, this is 30 minutes, correct?
Yeah, we can take a whole hour, so don't feel pressed for time.
Okay.
We're trying to provide all the good information, so please
So
continue.
so the one that I feel like, and I'll just go because I've got it on this actual computer, and I sometimes think real life is somewhat better for this, is the password manager.
Mm.
So, and this is
So,
to me, this is the frustrating thing, because you've probably heard me say this, you've probably heard Ernie say this 1,000 times, and I don't understand what the friction is for people to use this, because it makes your life easier. So we're not
right.
asking you to do something that is adding complexity to your life. We are actually taking complexity out of your life. To get into all of my passwords, I'm just typing in that code, and that is my master password. Now, I have a list of my clients' passwords here. They're all encrypted. I have a list of all the passwords. I don't have any password that is the same. When I need to create a new password, I will come over to my password manager, which sits in any browser I have, go to generate, and it will generate a 30-character complex password that I will use. So if I
So,
get, yes,
so we have a question. So first, let me preface this by saying, so you're using RoboForms. LastPass is another option, which I use somewhat,
right.
and then I use 1Password mostly because it's started as a Mac only thing, and I use Macs. But whatever password program you use, they all work the same. And the question, which I was going to say, but you're at the right point here, is can you talk about password security? I'm checking out LastPass. I still have a mental block about letting LastPass provide individualized computer-generated passwords. Would I be making myself totally dependent on LastPass? So explain why you're not making yourself totally dependent, and how you make sure that you don't lose access to all your passwords. If you could address that.
Yeah, and I mean, so this is one of those things, and that is a total valid question. I realize, and this is what gets me frustrating, is there's people on the other side of this argument that are like, don't use a password manager.
Oh,
But
we'll
these
come to
are,
those people. We'll come to those people in a second because I had planned to address that. We'll hold
yeah, the
that thought. We'll
chicken
come.
little people. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean, so here's the whole idea with RoboForm. If I have a brand new computer, okay, I have one password to get into RoboForm, okay? And so that's always the issue, is there's two things. What happens if I forget that password? Well, if you have your passwords with RoboForm or any other password manager, they'll help you get back into the account. But the other question, and maybe the more pressing, is so if someone hacks my RoboForm account, well, then they have all my passwords. I
But
mean,
that
I guess
hasn't happened yet. That hasn't happened yet. Like,
right.
it won't happen because nobody has figured out how to decrypt something with a strong password. If you make the password to enter your super Fort Knox type thing, something like password, which is the number one most easily guessed password. Well, yeah, people are going to try to guess that. That's not hacking in. That's just you being ignorant about how to properly pick a password. But if you pick a complex password, and really the way to pick a complex password is take three words that aren't normally associated with one another that you happen to know. And we were talking earlier before we started broadcasting about Elvis. Let's say I think, well, I'm going to work off of the Elvis thing. So I'm going to say Elvis, airplane, football. Why are those three things together? Well, because at Elvis Land, I saw the plane and I know he was obsessed with football. But most people aren't going to associate Elvis with those three things. So I can make those three words with spaces between them. That's a complex password that can't be easily guessed. And that's good. I can remember that, right? But it's not, like my dog Fred or San Francisco 49ers, so you pick a good password that's easy for you to remember, that's hard to hack. That's step one.
Yeah, I mean, and just to bring this up, in my RoboForm, I have 388 passwords. So, I mean, that's again, I have to let RoboForm manage that. I have to. I cannot. There's no system in place. That is my system. Now, the other thing, and I don't know if everyone saw this, is I went to the RoboForm login screen, typed in my email address and password, and then I immediately get stopped. Okay, I cannot log in unless I have my phone, and on my phone is an authenticator app. I have to open up that app and type in a 6-digit password that is changing every 30 seconds. So going back to the concern about someone going in and breaking into RoboForm, you will not be able to break into my RoboForm unless you know my email address, which you do on this presentation. You don't know my 30-character password to get into RoboForm, and you have to have my iPhone, which I'm looking at right now. You have to have it. You have to open up that iPhone. You have to open up the Authenticator app, which also requires Face ID, and then type in the 6-digit password. So I feel that that is secure. Now, if you have one password, okay, and this is the whole thing, is if you're just using one password over and over again, no matter how secure it is and how maybe clever you think that password is, there's this website here. Have I been pawned? I recommend everyone go to this website, type in. So I'm going to type in my work email address right now, and then I'm going to hit pawned. And what this is going to do is bring up every single data breach I've been involved in. 5 breach sites. So I don't even, and here's the thing, is some of these, I don't even know what they are.
Right. Now let's be clear. Yeah. And so like when I did this one time, it came up with like LinkedIn because LinkedIn got hacked. And, so basically all that means is some place that you have an online account with got hacked and all the passwords were revealed. And so if you're using that website and you're using that password anywhere else, somebody might be able to say, oh, well, if they're using it over here, they might be using it over there, which is the reason to use different passwords for every email account or online account that matters. And if it doesn't matter, that's fine. You can use the same one, but you want to be using different passwords for different accounts, because if LinkedIn gets hacked and I go, oh, okay, well, I'll get around to that when I get around to it, because I really don't care if people hack into my LinkedIn account, because that password isn't the one for my Chase Bank account or whatever, right? But if it was, I have to stop everything I'm doing immediately and go over there. Plus, I wouldn't necessarily have been notified that this occurred, so I might find out about it, when it's too late. So that's another reason to use different passwords.
Going back and talking about this real quick, I think we need to bring this up, and I think it is actually important now. So have a password manager. We are both in agreement on that. I think it makes you more safe than not having it.
Yep,
the other
I agree.
thing that we'll talk about is two-factor authentication. Okay.
Well, that's kind of what we did talk about, because when you said that you had your phone with you, that's what dual
Well,
factor authentication means, right?
but there's two types of two-factor authentication, and this is where I wouldn't bring it up before, but I'll bring it up now. I am
Okay.
using, okay, Authy. This is what I'm
Mhm.
using for my two-factor authentication. It is a free app that you install, and then when you go to any website, and let's go to the important one: who hosts your domain? Who hosts BayerLawFirm.com, you want to have two-factor authentication turned on that. So, but the thing about the two-factor authentication is there's two types. There's SMS and then there's app. You want to be using the app two-factor authentication. It is too easy to spoof your phone number. So what happens is when I go log into my bank account, at first they sent me a text message with that 6-digit code in there. That's too easy now to spoof. So you want to be using app-based two-factor authentication. Anyone on here has gotten a phone call from themselves? Because I have. And I mean, you just realize how easy it is now for all these robo-dialers and stuff like that. It's easy for someone to spoof your phone number and get that text message. So move to an app-based two-factor authentication. This is something easy when you set up, and then you can kind of forget about it.
Okay, so now you're telling me something that I didn't know. So, I mean, I knew about these apps. I guess I didn't really understand fully why I would want to use them because, of course, it's so much more convenient to just let them, text you, and that's what they steer you towards generally because that was, based off the idea. Yeah. So, but let's say that I want to sign up for, I don't know, Dropbox or whatever. And Dropbox goes, do you want to enable two-factor authentication? Of course, I say yes, and I did. And what they have done is they text me with my phone number. Where in the process do I tell them, no, I don't want to do that. I want you to send it to Authy or whatever. How does that work?
Well, we'll just go into settings because they usually have it here. So under security is going to be there. Two-factor authentication, preferred method. This is basically on every website. Now, Authenticator app, and I've gone in. What happens, this is probably the only use for QR codes. So when you get in here, you have your phone, you have the Authy opened, you will take a picture of the QR code, and that will start the process.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, right now, you could keep talking. I'm going to download the Authy app.
That's the best one because here's the good thing about Authy is that it has for your Apple Watch, it has it too. So if I don't have my phone by me, I get the authentication on my Apple Watch and I put it in. You'll make a backup of those codes just in case. So like here's 6 codes. I print those out and put them in a safe. Now,
well, what I've done with those, and tell me if this isn't the right thing to do, is I have taken those codes and put them in a special locker inside of 1Password.
Yeah, that's fine. As long as you can get into that, then you're fine.
Yeah.
What we'll change to eventually, and I think that this will be what we're talking about later, and there's all sorts of things, but there is a USB key that you can use that you see a lot of people using. So you have a key on your keychain, you have to plug it into your computer. There's some other options. We just want everyone on this call to be using an Authenticator app. And I would go back to what we talked about earlier when we set up the policies, go through all these services and turn on two-factor authentication. The most important one to turn on is your domain name, because if someone can break into your domain name, they can really break into your email and then they can reset everything. So you want to really lock that up. That's your most weak, vulnerable point. That's how a lot of hackers get stuff.
Cool. All right. So I had used Authy before because when I pulled it up, I realized like, okay, I downloaded. It seems familiar. I don't remember now why I used it. So it's vaguely familiar with it. But of course, now I'll just use myself as the guinea pig because I know what the question is going to be next. Because this is my question. Is like, so now what I need to do is then is go through my password manager and then look at the things I want to change, to remind me like, okay, start with Dropbox. You just showed me how to do it, and then just pick every one of these things, and it's going to take me, an hour or maybe a little more, but I need to do it. So I need to block out time to do this, and I need to recognize that I don't want to, but it makes sense, so I'm going to do it. So I'm just saying that out loud so that anybody else who's thinking like I'm thinking realizes that you probably should do the same thing.
Well, so just to bring this up, so I do like this feature of RoboForm. I have an 85% excellent security score. I have 388 passwords. 23 are reused. Okay. Now, if I look at these, it's not, it's like, and I need to basically what I need to do is go in there. It tells me how old the password is, and I need to go in there and change those to unique passwords. It also gives me a score week. The problem is a lot of this stuff, let me just shoot it off there, is client passwords that they've given me. Or that's what that 15% is. Because I just go to anything and make it the maximum password. If you
Hmm.
do that, you're you're no longer the low hanging fruit. Um,
Right.
I'll bring up. Can I bring up something else, or
Yeah.
have we
Yeah.
exhausted
Please.
this topic? So
Yeah, we got.
let's go. And this is not as important for Macs. This is Windows users. Okay. This right here. Now this is my training computer. All right. This account administrator. Okay. This means that my account that I'm logged into has full access to this machine. All right, that's a huge no-no. I mean, this computer that I'm on right now is not used daily. It's a training computer, so there's a reason why we have it as admin. But if you go to my work computer that I use daily, it is not an administrator account. It's a standard account, which means anytime I try to install software on that account on my computer, I have to type in an admin password. All right. Now, that's good for a couple of reasons. But the biggest one is if you accidentally click on a link or something like that that has a virus in it, that screen pops open. Don't type in the admin password and the virus doesn't get installed. Like that is the almost foolproof way of making sure that you don't get a virus on your computer. Not as important on the Mac. It's important on, you could do it on the Mac too. It might be overkill. It's not overkill on a Windows computer.
Yeah, I don't do it on the Mac because I know, because
Mac
I've
does
heard you
that
say this
anyway.
before.
The
Yeah,
Mac
like you
always,
can't.
right,
Yeah, it always asks you.
pops
So
for that password.
like if it's like, why is it asking for a password? Oh, because something's happening in the background that I didn't know about. So yeah, so I feel comfortable with the Mac, but yeah, that's super important for sure. So let me say one thing real fast because I think this is important, and we can. I mean, as you can see, we're just kind of riffing here. And there is a presentation that I think Craig did that's in the law firm autopilot course that you have access to because you signed up for the boot camp, or when you sign up, it's in there, and that's more going through this in a straightforward way. But what we want to do here is riff and answer any questions you have. But one of the things I want to point out, because I know this wasn't in that presentation, and this is important to know, and that is when we talked earlier, and you said, there are these people who won't tell you to do this. The reason, so there are people out there, and Craig and I know who they are, who, they're quote unquote security experts, and there's some that specialize with lawyers. And the thing is with the security experts, I find, and this is a conversation that you and I always have, and we've had it many times at conferences, is they're just demagogues, right? Their strategy for marketing their business is to instill as much fear as possible and make you feel like the internet is one big long dark alley, and if you use it, you're going to get beat up unless you hire them. And the only reason to hire somebody who's a super duper amazing security expert, beyond the stuff that we're talking about, because this is this, anybody, somebody like Craig can tell you about this, even though he's not a quote whatever the certification is, because I'm sure there is one, um, is because those folks want you to be as scared as possible because then they can sell you more stuff. Now they may not consciously know this. I don't know. They're good people. Some of them, most of them we like, but it's that old saying by Ogden Sinclair or whomever that said, it's hard to get a man to understand something when his job depends on him not understanding it. These folks don't understand or don't want to understand nor help you understand that there's some simple, amazing things that you can and should do that will protect you from 85, 90, whatever percent of the most common hacks. And after that, it's if somebody says I'm targeting you and they really are targeting you and they know what they're doing, well, read the newspapers. How many wealthy, high profile people who hell, David Petraeus, the CIA, director at one point got hacked, for some stuff. So like, you're not going to win that war probably, right? So you can pay them to help you try to win a war you're not going to win, but you're not being targeted, so you don't really need them. But they don't tell you this. So the reason I invite Craig to speak on security, and Craig's going to talk about practice management and other stuff because he knows about it, but it's because he's not going to play this demagogue game. So Craig is my go-to person for what do I need to know about security, and that's why I invited him and not one of these people who specializes in it, because all you're going to hear from them is, as we have heard, remember when they used to tell us, like, don't use an iPhone. iPhones are very scary. You can't use an iPhone. It's
Right.
very bad. And we were like, what are you talking about? The iPhone's like highly secure. And it turns out that it is, but they used Windows and they didn't like Apple, and so they didn't recommend it, and they used it to scare people, and we don't like those people, so avoid them.
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at this is most of the stuff is looking at kids checking cars, you know? So they're walking around and they're going to every car and they're hitting, the door handle and they're going into the ones that open. We want to
Yep.
lock that door. That's all we're trying to do. And we're trying to suggest stuff, and this comes back into the whole human nature thing. Nothing that I'm suggesting here, it all makes your life easier. It doesn't make it
Right.
harder. So, but
Right.
you just have to do that, and then once that happens, um, you'll be in good shape. But I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
it's
the thing is, with all this stuff, the secret to unlocking the power of technology is always evaluating the trade-offs, right? Like, if you don't funnel every decision and evaluation through trade-offs analysis, you can get, you start chasing shiny objects, you don't know which things to prioritize, and you take your eye off the ball. But if you say, is this trade-off worth it? Let me go through the trade-off calculation. So let me do the trade-off calculation for you out loud with security. What are you trading off by doing this? Well, you got to set it up and you got to take time, or you might have to download the Authy app, and you might have to, go through and spend the time to, set it up so two-factor authentication is going through Authy and not SMS. Yes, that's a trade-off. Okay, you have limited time, and if you do that, you can't do other stuff. Now, is it worth it? Oh my God, yes, it is worth it, because if they hack your computer and take all your data, just imagine all the consequences of that. So it's worth it. Now, is it going to protect you perfectly? No, because we already talked about that, right? But now you know the calculation, right? Do you want to have your data secure? Are you encrypting on your hard drive? No, well then turn that on. That'll take you however long it takes you. Do you need to send clients data through the mail or whatever? Well, then get one of those hard drives that has a keypad on it. But just realize that having the mindset, or the I'm gonna ostrich and bury my head in the sand and hope it doesn't happen to me because they're not targeting me. They're not going to get you because they're targeting you, as Craig just says right here. It's guys going around, except it's not guys going around. It's robots that they send out and to scour the internet and say, yep, there's an exploit here. Okay, well then just go ahead and take the next step and install the keylogger, and then just do all the things, and then notify me when the data has been encrypted, and maybe even automatically send out the email that tells people that the crypto locker virus is installed. I mean, these guys are not spending any effort to do this. They've automated it all. So, you're on their list by virtue of being a computer user on the internet. So do the trade-off calculation and then make the smart choice. That's my rant. So we have time for questions if you have any. We answered the first question. You don't have to have them all today, because if you're in the Slack group, you guys know, those of you who are in the Copilot program, those of you, well, mostly in the Copilot program, Craig's in there. Craig doesn't like Facebook, so he's not in our Facebook community that much. And I'm speaking for you. I'm sure you
That's
love
true.
Facebook.
No, I do
Okay,
not.
you don't like Facebook. Okay, so it's a time sink or whatever, and I agree. But so he's in the Slack group though, because Slack is okay. So you can just reach out to him by typing at CRA, and his name will pop up, and you can pick Craig Bayer, and ask him questions that way, or ask me questions in the security channel, or ask anybody security questions in the security channel. And you can email Craig, or find his website. And I highly recommend those of you that have not done this yet, that you go to his website and sign up for his email list and get his information, because his information is going to be good information. and he'll be
Well, if
talking
you
about
go,
stuff that I don't talk
yeah,
about as
and if you
much.
go to resources, there is a law firm security white paper that you can sign up for that kind of goes
Yeah,
over this in more detail.
right. So there you go. That's a good thing to start with. And then when you come to the boot camp, let me just remind everybody how this is going to be working. Um, basically, and I sent an email out about this, right before we started, but I think like, if you want to make massive improvements to your practice, and that's really all I'm interested in helping people get, like incremental small change stuff, that doesn't move the needle. I'm not interested in trying to help people with that because I know that that doesn't really matter. That didn't help me that much. I don't think that helps anybody else that much. There's lots of people who do that. I'm not interested in that. And I know you're not interested in that either, Craig. So what we try to do, and this whole boot camp thing has evolved basically from the fact that pretty much all of the speakers, or certainly most of them, of the 18 speakers we have, were all people that met by virtue of the ABA Tech Show. That I think is how we met originally, if not directly, indirectly. Maybe
Yes.
you knew Tom, and Tom introduced us, but
Yes.
we all know what I will call the inner circle. Like we there are people, we've met lots of people, consultants, the speakers, the people who know stuff, the lawyers who are good at this, the consultants who are good at this. I don't know how many of those people comprise, the world of the tech show speaker world, but it's bigger now, obviously. But there's people who've been around for a long time and this is my take on it. I've met these folks. These are the people that I know give me real, the real scoop, the real story. They're not trying to convince me like some people were early on. Oh no, the clouds still, it's very dangerous. Don't go to the clouds. Like really, God, it seems like it's fine. And then I talked to Craig, and Craig, they're like, no, it's fine if you use a good password. And these people are demonizing. Why? Because they made money off of selling people servers or maintaining servers. So I don't like dealing with those people. So my inner circle are the people who share the same value and mission I do, which is like, let's help people, by giving them good advice and tell them what's really going on. And I will say this as well. This is another reason why you'd want to come to boot camp over other conferences that you might go to. Or if you go to another conference, then do this when you get to the conference. And Craig, you don't have to endorse what I'm saying, but if what I'm saying is not true, then just start clicking your mouse or something, because I know that sometimes we get in a position where we can't say something. So I'll use as an example fine law. Fine law is a bad idea. Nobody should use fine law. I don't know, maybe now there's some people who could use it that it would be okay and they wouldn't have trouble, but so many people have had so much trouble with fine law over so many years that I don't care if they're completely reformed and have joined a missionary. Their track record is so bad for so long. Do not use fine law. Now, why don't you hear people say this at conferences? I'll tell you why. Because fine law is owned by Thomson Reuters, which owns West. West has a very prestigious reputation in the legal community, and so when West goes to fill in the name of the bar association, local, state, ABA, that bar association goes, oh well, of course you're fine law, you're West Publishing, and you want to give us money to be a sponsor. Great, okay, here's where you sign, deal done. And then we go to be a speaker at one of these conferences. Well, we can't say from the stage that fine law is horrendous, right? Because that would be an insult to the sponsor. I mean, to the conference
Right.
organizer. So we just don't talk about that in public. And I'm sure fine law knows this, and that's why they pump the money into the sponsors. But privately, you and I and several other people, in our inner circle, have been having this conversation for a long time. And it's not just fine law; it's some other things, which I don't know all of them because I don't keep up with that the way that Craig does. But if you ask Craig or the other folks privately at the conference, say, by the way, what do you think about this option versus that option? You're going to get the straight scoop. And if you say to Craig, I'm interested in net documents, should I get it? He's going to go, well, I don't know. Like, what are you using now? Because he's going to want to help you get the best thing, and he's not the kind of person who's going to try to steer you to something that isn't the best trade-off for you. And he's going to get a trade-off analysis, without thinking about it. Right. So these are the people that are going to be at this conference, and this is why I'm doing a conference. If it was just, it's not a way to make money. It's not. I'm not going to make if I make any money, it won't be enough for this to have been worth it in terms of making money. It's worth it to me because this is the other piece of the puzzle for how I can help people figure out what they need to do with their practice, right? Like online course, that's great. That's self-directed. You can learn some stuff. Copilot, that's better because it's ongoing guidance and we can have private discussions in the Slack channel. But, a lot of those private discussions that could happen aren't going to happen or won't happen until people know each other better. I wonder how I can get them to help you know each other better. 2-day conference, right? Like everybody in one room, Copilot people, new people, my favorite inner circle speaker people, a few select sponsor people, who are the right kind of folks. That's it. No fine laws and none of the other people that Craig would tell me, yeah, that you don't want to have that there because those people are bad, right? So that's what the boot camp is. And if that makes sense to you, then come. And if you can't come, at least you're getting these weekly webinars. And since you signed up for these weekly webinars, if you're not registered yet, you're locked in at the early bird price. And if later on an opportunity opens up, you can pop in and you will be able to, sign up for, $850 instead of later on as we get close, it's going to be $12.95, and that's a lot more money. And the reason I do this is because I know from experience. Well, first of all, I would do this anyway, but I give people a full refund if they can't come later because like it's kind of a pain in the ass if you sign up for a conference and you're excited about going and then you can't come for whatever reason at the last minute. I mean, why should you be penalized for that? And why should I say to you, well, that's tough luck. You paid me the money. I'm not giving it back. That doesn't make sense to me. I have learned from having done this in the past, and people told me I was crazy when I suggested I was going to do it. I know that, the only people who cancel are people who truly can't make it. It's people like, oh my God, something came up. And then they usually say things like, well, can I just apply this to the next time you do it? And I'm like, no, because I don't know when I'm going to do it. But so I know people don't cancel because they want to take advantage or whatever. But I also know it's going to sell out. And when it sells out, I'll just take, $850 back or give you $850 back and sell it for $12.95. And I don't want to do it for that reason, but people who wait till the last minute, that's how it works. So that's kind of the overview. If you have any questions about boot camp, I'm happy to answer those. But you have the free webinars that are going to keep coming up. So even if you haven't registered, we can help you that way. Everything in my life right now is pointed toward this boot camp. And for me, it's fun because I get to bring all my great friends together in one place and let them help me help more people effectively. And we hang out and we're going to have a second line party and we're going to have a nice cocktail reception and we're going to have fun. So that's my spiel about the boot camp. Craig, do you have any parting thoughts or, we got 3 minutes, one last big important tip that maybe you didn't tell us that you're thinking, folks should know or whatever?
Just do it. I mean, is that the easiest one to say? Is just come out when you come to the boot camp, have a password manager, and that way, I guess you could get a cocktail or something while I'm rambling on about it. But just do it. There's no excuse not to do it. I mean, it's easy to do. If you're sitting down watching a sporting event or something, you can just bring up your computer and go through. But set it up now. I mean, it's just so easy, and it's an investment that will pay you back.
Right. And I forgot to mention that there's going to be 2 parts to this. There's going to be the main room where we have a session, and it'll be the traditional, like a presentation of 30 minutes, typically, not an hour, because we don't need to do it for an hour, unless it requires an hour. But most presentations are going to be done in 30 minutes. So Craig can go through his security presentation in 30 minutes, and then afterwards we're going to have a separate room. It's a workshop room, and it's going to be going on simultaneously. So the folks who are in the Copilot program, for whom sitting and listening to these initial presentations is pretty much not likely what they want, because the whole point of Copilot is they keep up with this stuff and they've got access to the autopilot course and they can access Craig. So we've got a whole discussion going on with those folks. If they want to go into the workshop area, they go in there, and the workshop area is more like this kind of conversation, right? Like we ask questions, we tell you how to do it, maybe we show you if you have the question, stuff that we can't do in a room with 150 people, with big screens, we can do we can do in a smaller workshop room. So if you want to do that, if you're in Copilot, you're automatically in that. If you want to join Copilot, you can get in that way, or we can talk about how you can upgrade to that if you want to. But that's another thing I want to have happen. Like I'm fine with the presentations, but people go to a presentation of 30 minutes. Some of them are going to want to say, okay, well, show me how the Authy app works, and that can happen in these workshop areas. So that's something else I think you kind of need to know about. And with that, we're right at the 1 hour mark. And so I'll wrap it up and we'll finish up this recording and post it to the online area that folks that are registered for the bootcamp have access to. And then next week, we're going to be doing a webinar with Megan Graham about online marketing related stuff. And yeah, we're just going to have topics from the speakers that we're going to give you a taste of, and then we're going to develop it as we go along. That's kind of what we're doing here. So, all right, thank you, Charles, and thank you everyone for attending, and we will look forward to seeing you in the next webinar next week. And thank you, Craig. I really appreciate it, man.
Thank you. Have a great day.